Thank you.
Take it.
All right, so I have a mere 175 slides to go through, so pull out your notebooks. I was going to ask you, how much time do I have?
You can go all the way till 9 if you want. That'll give you an hour and 15 minutes.
So I can come up here and I can do a canned presentation. Or what I prefer with a group this small is let's have a chat. I can kind of run you through some basic stuff on kind of who Spartan is so that you kind of understand where we came from, kind of what we're doing. And then we can talk about some basics on self-storage, but I'd be more interested to answer questions and have kind of a facilitated discussion amongst the group. Or do you guys want to go through my 175 slides? What do you prefer? Both. Okay, so go get pillows, sleeping blanket. So let's do this. Let me give you some background on Spartan, kind of on kind of who we are and kind of where we started, because I think that's important because it can go pretty fast. So where we started as house flippers, and it was my partner and I. Oh, do I have it? That's my house. That's my partner's house. That's a crack house. This is in Southeast DC. And my real estate investing career started with my wife coming home one day and saying, do something about that. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? She's like, I don't know. Fix it. So we did. But at the time, Ryan was an airline pilot, was flying for Air Wisconsin, and has moved up and out and no longer flies. And I'm an Army dude that was working for the federal government at the time. Neither one of us really had any real estate experience when we started. This was in 2014 when we started working on this project. We had to go through some title work or whatever, and we sold it in 2015. All I could scrape together at the time was $100 grand. And that was wrangling my father-in-law for 50 grand, tapping my TSP, which is the government 401k, and convincing a buddy to throw in some money. And I could scrape together 100 grand. We got a bank loan for 175 grand and sold this for 600,000 bucks a little bit later, right? That's what gave us the money to seed the company to kind of continue to go forward with that. That's how we got started on this single one. That was in 2015. So today, we have about 25,000 storage units in our portfolio. We got up to about 30,000. We sold 10 properties over the summer. 130 full-time employees. We've raised over $250 million in equity and private debt. $500 million of assets under management. It was higher. It was about $600 million, and then this whole cap rate thing kind of got us. So now we're down to about $500 million. We've been 4-time Inc. 500 and Vet 100 fastest growing companies in the U.S. Bought our first storage facility in 2018. That was a small one that was 13,000 square feet, 115 units. We expanded it to 26,000 square feet. But we didn't buy our first real facility that was 80,000 square feet until April of 2019. And from then to now, we've bought 62 facilities since then. So total of 500 million. So you can see it was fast. We moved pretty quickly along kind of our strategic plan, which I'll talk about a little bit more because it was a really important kind of guideline to get where we were going to go. Okay, so this is just kind of a general map of where our portfolio is. So for Texas and Florida, you can see we're heavily concentrated in Texas and the Southeast. We are completely vertically integrated. This was a decision that we made very early on to keep everything inside of our value chain so that we could control the customer, investor, shareholder experience in every single thing that we do. If you invest with us, you'll see that our investor communications are top notch. If you store with us, you'll see that we do the best we can to take care of all of our customers. And if you're a team member inside of our company, Spartan culture is by far some of the best you'll ever, or one of the best you'll ever stumble upon. None of it is by accident. So we have acquisitions in-house. We have an acquisitions team that goes out and finds all of our deals. We have a capital markets team that goes out through syndication and in the capital markets that funds all of our deals. And we have a construction management, asset management, and property management all in-house. One of the big things that kind of like really kind of got us started was the thoroughness in our due diligence. You can go to our website. I think you can still download it. There's a about 740 point due diligence checklist. You can go to the website and download it. We give it away. It's mainly storage based, so if you're doing residential, it's not going to be super helpful. If you're doing multifamily, it'll be more helpful than if you were just doing residential. So before I jump into the self-storage stuff, are there any questions or like anything that you want to discuss about Spartan before we get into the asset class specifically? And ask me any questions you want. I'll be transparent. Just tell me what you want to know.
Like you did the one flip, the crack house, and then just straight up started doing storage right after that?
4.
What do you mean? Oh,
4 flips.
Gotcha.
So 4 flips. But our last flip, we made $1 million on it. So we knew we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We knew we were going to screw up everything that we were doing. So we did only deals with a minimum project level margin in it of 30 to 50%. So it's really kind of an interesting story. And I'm going to segue around because I think some of this will be helpful for you guys. And we'll touch on the storage and just kind of meander. That last deal that we did $1 million on. So when you think about raising money, right? Because some of you want to raise money in here on how important it is to have your stuff buttoned up. So that last deal we did, that was a condo. It was a condo conversion in the District of Columbia. We actually renovated 4 houses on the same street. This deal, we got the house for $450,000. We knew the underlying zoning, right? So that's hugely important, especially in the residential space. If you're in urban infill, understanding zoning is incredibly important. We got the house for $450,000. The value, if we burned it to the ground, was $1 million. Literally, fire would have been a good investment. And we couldn't raise $1. We went out to our friends, our family. Literally, no one will give us any money. Like, it can burn down and your money is safe, literally on fire. But we were having a barbecue at the White House in that first picture, and we had our strategic plan up. And you can go to our website and you can download our strategic plan. We give it away. And I'll tell you why we do that. But our friends found it. It was a Word document, like one of those that had like coffee stains on it. I think I had some queso on it from lunch. It was a working document. And they're like, hey, can we take this? I don't know. It's not really for public consumption here, but fine. Earlier that week, literally 72 hours earlier, they told us no money. Read the plan, came back on Sunday morning, gave us $250,000. And we're like, what the heck? What happened? You said no, and now you're funding half of our raise. What are you doing? Like, why? I'm like, we read your plan. This plan clearly lays out your vision and where you're going to go, and we want to go with you. So step one for scaling in anything is to truly understand your vision and map that out. Because if it's here, it's nowhere. It doesn't exist if it's in your head. Because it needs to be out of your head so that the people in this room can easily read it and understand where you want to go. If you go to Spartan's website and you read the plan, it will be unequivocally clear who we are and where we want to go. So when you think about that from a perspective of finding team members, everybody's worried about being everything for everybody. Spartan is not for everybody. I fire people all the time. And I don't lose sleep on it at all because I protect the team. And having all of those documents laid out will help you along your path, whatever it is, whatever you want to do. At one point in time, we were growing at 1,800% per year. That was our growth rate. And that's why. What are the questions about Spartan or like that before I jump into storage?
On the slide where you showed your employees, there are about 40 people there. How many of them are partners? What are all the
So here is why you shouldn't do this. Not there, not there, not there, not there, not there, not there. Let's see. Not there, not there, not there. Wow, holy this picture's not that old. Ha. So, we have about 150 employees, plus or minus. They go up with our property level folks. We bring on 10, fire 10. It kind of goes all over the place, right? When you're on your property management folks. So the overall structure. So that's actually a really great question, because how many of you heard your VA is the number one hire that you should do? That's a bunch of garbage. Garbage. So the original was me and Ryan, right? So when I talk about our Genesis plan, it's not a very repeatable plan, because our first employee was my wife. And she came over as she came over from being an intelligence analyst with Special Operations Command. And she came in and was our director of business intelligence. Our second employee was Ryan's wife, Jackie. She was running hotels, so she came in as our director of operations. So good luck executing that plan. It was really funny. I was talking to a couple of young guys at another mastermind, and they were like, "How are we going to do this?" And I told them, and I've met their wives, and they're great people. However, they chose different metrics on how they chose their wives. They said, "Well, guys, if you're going to execute my strategy, you're going to have to make some changes. So I don't know if you're willing to do that or not." Neither of them were. So our strategy isn't going to work for them. But it was interesting the way that we brought them on, right? Because yes, they were our wives, and yes, they were vested in the business, but we gave them ownership directly, not even through marriage and marital laws. We put their names on the operating agreement, right? And that created ownership for them. So we were able to go get leaders inside like right away, right? Now, again, our story is not very repeatable because we both had spouses that were highly technical in the fields that we needed right away. You can say it's luck, whatever, but so that's how we started that initial ownership. And the last owner that came on was Ben, our CFO, and he was the analytical guy that came on. So we chopped up the company right away. So when you're thinking about this, you want to eat the whole grape or you want to bite at the watermelon? Because a lot of people keep all the ownership to themselves. That's great. That is a strategy. And if you can grow really fast and you can do that, I've got folks in my YPO chapters, they own 100% of their business, and they're a $100 million business. They are far wealthier than I am. But they did it in 13 years. I did it in 4. So it just depends on what you really want to, how you want to structure that. Now, finding partners is hard. You can execute my strategy and you can move next to them. Again, not a very repeatable strategy. So our Genesis story kind of sucks from the kind of learning perspective from it, but it is true. That's what happened. Anything else on Spartan before we get into storage?
You used to work at U-Haul. It was randomly one of those locations that actually was one of the top stores in the company, but it was completely mismanaged. I was actually quite impressed that self-storage was that reliable of a resource, of a real estate investment. I was going to ask them, since you were just talking about the employees, how much staff do you actually keep on site? And is mismanagement one of those reasons why you tend to fire and hire more often?
So great questions, and I'll start pivoting to the storage side. If there's no other questions about, I think this thing is for that, so I will speak up. I have absolutely no problem projecting. So one of the reasons why Spartan decided to do storage, right, is I hate people. I wanted no part of multifamily. I wanted no part of housing, none of that nonsense. And we weren't going to pivot into the major food groups of industrial, office, or retail with no experience. That was a great way to get our head kicked in. So we started looking at alternatives. So one of the things that we use that comes from my Army career is the military decision-making process. It is a structured decision-making framework that is used in complex and ambiguous environment. We used it in combat to decide what mission we were going to do. What are we going to do? But it's very applicable in your everyday life. I train it, like I'm still in the Army Reserves and I still train it today, and I train it to all of my team members to make decisions on where to go to dinner. It's a little bit overkill for figuring out lunch, but for vacations, it's actually great, especially if you and your spouse, I don't know, like mine. Some of us like kind of a spa. The other ones want to rappel down cliffs. Which one do you do? Well, it's a great process for figuring that out because you establish evaluation criteria right out of the gate. What's important to you? That's what we did here when we were looking at a commercial asset class. Our evaluation criteria were easy to evict, easy to maintain, easy to operate. When you think about all of the food groups and you factor out the ones for people, you start to look at easy to evict. There is no other asset class that's easier to evict than self-storage. Because why? What happens if you don't pay me? That's cool. I appreciate that. Here's an overlock. I'm going to give you 30 days, and then I'm going to auction your stuff off. It's not storage wars. There's never a dude with a midget on his shoulders with night vision goggles looking into the unit. No. It's some pictures taken like this that are put on the internet, and you lose money on every single storage auction because you cannot keep the money. So when you think about that, easy to evict. I can get my unit back usually in 60 days, 90 days if my team screws it up. Easy to maintain. I sell air. It's what we do. It is air. Preferably dry air, but not always. We're not perfect, right? That's what we sell. It's a box with a door on it. You have them at home. I was on a stage years ago, and there were Europeans in the room, and they could not get it. Okay, so the guy was French. I can't do a French accent, but whatever. So the guy, like, he was French, and he's just like, listen, I don't understand. What is this self-storage? I'm like, it's a garage. You Americans, you buy somebody else's garage? I'm like, well, no, they rent. Well, what do they put in there? I don't know, stuff. Could not get it. He's like, well, how do you do it? You stand in door, open door, walk in. I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, it's a box with a door on it. Europeans just did not get this, right? Just they don't understand. That's what it is. That's it. So it's pretty easy to maintain. Have any of you had a tenant that's like wrecked your shit before they left? I haven't. Now, I've had plenty of people drive into all kinds of stuff because people can't drive anything. Nothing. I mean, they've taken out 6-inch concrete bollards. I don't even know how you do that. Like, we've had to use bulldozers to take them out, and these guys figure it out with a U-Haul. I mean, that's talent. Like, I appreciate that. I'm like, actually, thank you. I needed to replace that side of my building. So, but for the most part, right? So that's the easy to maintain. The operate. That's where it's slightly different. So self-storage is not necessarily a real estate play. It is an operating business. So when you think about your office, your retail, even multi have year leases. So if you have a 200-unit property, that's a pretty big multifamily property, right? You're in the $50, $60 million property. There's not a lot of people doing that. Those leases are once a year for the most part. And if you're smart, you've stacked them. So at most, you have 10 people rotating per month, something along those lines, right? Self-storage, month to month. And you know that piece of construction paper that your kid glued some macaroni to that you've held for 37 years? At some point, you're going to be like, listen, Johnny, that's cool. You did great, but I don't care about that anymore. And some people will walk away. I shouldn't say nobody. Very few people are walking away from their apartment and just leaving all their stuff in it, right? So the ease of operation, that's a little bit more difficult. So when you think about that, if you think about to answer your question on the U-Haul side, number one, U-Haul is the worst REIT operator out there. They are a dumpster fire. And the reason is because they don't care. They're trucks, right? And the storage is their little redheaded stepkid that they put in there. Like, that's what they do, right? That's what they put in there. So from an operations perspective, when you're getting into storage, if you're going to look to own it, like, make no mistake, if you're going to own it, you have to pay attention to it. It is not a set it and forget it asset class. So I always tell folks, if you're going to buy one, that's fantastic. Unless it's within 1 hour of your house, I would strongly be careful in trying to manage it yourself. There is a ton of third-party options that are pretty good. Not U-Haul. So Extra Space, CubeSmart, Public, even some regionals are pretty good third-party operators or third-party managers that you can have them manage your facility. So just be mindful on that. That, yeah, I mean, if you think about the employee, especially the ones that want to live, how many of you guys want to live in a storage facility? Are you sure? I mean, there's some relatively interesting things that go on in said storage facilities. What's that? Yo, yeah.
People were taking showers on the property, breaking in.
They take showers? Like that? You got a good property.
When the pipes start to leak, they use my shower.
No, creative. You can't fault them for that. They're probably the ones that rented the U-Haul and drove it into the wall.
At least one.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to build these facilities, or you always bought a stable business or a business that you bought?
I am glad you asked that question. You will help me wreck my technological ability here. For the love of God, Ryan, why'd you put so many things in here? I think there's music here, but who cares? So, to answer your question, we do both. There's supposed to be movement going on up here right now. I know it doesn't seem fantastic. Let's see. It might be. It might be internet based. Oh. Woo. This one is in Sandy, Oregon, just outside of Portland, maybe by about 40 minutes or so. It's a Class A build. It's a smaller facility. It's about 50,000 square feet out there, which is a shame because it's $24 rents, which is really good for storage. This is Mini West self-storage. This is the first real facility we ever purchased in Corsicana, Texas, home of the fruitcake. So if you ever want a really tasty fruitcake, Collins Street Bakery, don't knock it till you try it. So this one we bought the facility and it came with a car wash. This is the time-lapse construction of putting the storage. Depends where you're at. Depends what you're building, right? Like kind of like that one I was a hero on cost me $41 a square foot. 41. We built that in 2020. So it's probably 50 or 60 bucks a square foot now. So the facility that you're seeing there, this one was a really, really interesting ground up development in Black Diamond, Washington. So as you can imagine, not dissimilar to developing here. Developing in the state of Washington is very difficult. So on that particular project, we had to negotiate with 2 Indian tribes, 5 easements on the piece of land, get extorted by a church, have our city engineer literally get hit by a bus, watch 2 biologists fight each other on the property, which just picture that, right? Wasn't exactly a Tyson and Holyfield bout out there, right? We had to count fish in a stream with no water. What else? Oh, we had to get a senator involved to mess up the Army Corps of Engineers because they were just sitting on our 404 permit. So, like, that was a PhD in development. That was our first project. So, that's what you call a bad decision when you look back on it. It's going great now, but like if I knew now what I had done then, I would have taken a nap instead of done anything with that project. That's right. You're right. I did. Actually, I didn't. Ryan did.
I remember looking back at the map. I remember it was mainly Central Texas and Southern Florida. So you mainly looked like you mainly focused on the South, the Southwest, and the Southeast. Are there specific reasons why you don't go to specific areas?
Yes. So we will not buy in California, New York, or Illinois. Just don't appreciate the business climates there. So love your state, great palm trees, sweet weather, you can have it. So you don't have to worry about Spartan coming into your backyard, buy away. So those are states that are just off limits to us. A lot of times in some of the other states up in Montana and Idaho, the rents and the returns, when you have a weighted average cost of capital of about 11.5% like we do from our equity and our debt, it just gets really hard to make the deals pencil for us. So a lot of those operators aren't necessarily big national syndicators. They might be local operators that have their own capital, so they're just easier to do. Up in the Northeast, that's a tough climate to operate in if you're going to be up there and you don't understand the good old boy network, and we're not super interested in messing with that. It's very similar to why we don't do business in Illinois. Like, there is a legitimate kind of way to do business in Illinois that we are not really interested in. I'm not kidding.
Why don't you go to Mammoth, though, because there's a waiting list for self-storage.
There is a waiting list in a lot of places. So I don't have to go to Mammoth to get that. Yes. So there are like, again, for you guys that like to operate in California, there are some $30, $35, $40 markets here in California. Like, by all means, get after it. What else we got? You guys wanted to learn about storage. I can go through some of this. Like, you guys want to know just the basic facts of storage for some of them? All right, so let me do that and I'll jump back into questions. Okay, so when we look at kind of the trend of occupancies inside of self-storage, it's been pretty stable. When you see here, 2008, here during COVID, storage stayed pretty stable. Why is that? Nobody moved. And what else? It's a hassle to move your stuff. It's terrible. I had to pack like 4 boxes to take some stuff out of my kitchen. I'm like, I'm done. Like, I would rather burn my house down than move and just start over. There's nothing in there that I care enough about to spend the time moving. Like, honestly, I'll repaint that picture. It's not that great. So when you think about that, like, storage stays pretty stable. Here's another reason that most people don't think about. You multifamily folks here in California, what's your average rent? $2,500, right? Like, like, you know what it isn't? $87. That's what the average rent is on a storage facility across the United States. $87. What are you going to do for $87? Are you going to spend your Saturday to go clean out that unit for $87? Probably not. It's not going to happen. So it stays pretty stable. And people like their stuff. It's loss aversion, right? We value our stuff. Like that piece of cardboard that your kid drew, let me tell you, it's not that good. It just isn't. We all glued macaroni to construction paper, guys. Everybody did it. However, because it's your child, you really value it. So it's worth putting it in a box and paying $75,000 for it when you put it in a storage unit for 30 years. And I'm not kidding. So we were looking at this one facility in Ohio. And it had one of those Trans Ams, with like the eagle on the hood. And it had been there so long that a tree, it's not fast, this is a tree, had grown through it and out the other side of the T-top. I don't know how long that takes. I'm not a botanist, but I can look at it and be like, that wasn't a couple weeks. That was decades. Tires are flat, right? Guy was paying $60 a month. And now the owner wouldn't let him cut the tree. He's like, so I don't know what you're going to do, dude. So if you want that, if the glory days of your mullet in the 80s, you want that back, you're going to have to pay a lot of money. So what's the guy going to do, right? He's like the cousin in Napoleon Dynamite, or the uncle, whatever that guy was, with the football, like in the RV. That's who that guy was, right? That guy's paying $60 a month to park his like Trans Am on grass with a tree growing in it. But he didn't want to get rid of it, right? So that's why it stays really stable. And it is even today. Who's heard bad news about storage today? Yeah, it's out there, right? Like, oh, the world's crumbling. No, it's not. It's just coming back down to where it should have been without the COVID nonsense. So we're still across our portfolio, and we have a heavy value add portfolio. We're still in the 80s, low 80s. We have a heavy value add with a lot of lease up going on right now. So when you think about that, storage as an asset class, it's the dumbest asset class out there. It's air, but it's a lot of air. So going back to, let me see if I can find my, catastrophic failure. So, interesting statistic. More storage facilities in the United States than Starbucks, McDonald's, Dunkin's, Pizza Hut, and Wendy's combined. Yeah. Just wait. After this call, you're going to hate life because you're going to see them everywhere.
Facilities is in groups or individual like units?
Facilities.
The facilities, the whole.
Yes. US based, not worldwide.
Sure.
Where's the largest concentration of facilities?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. It's pretty evenly distributed. It's funny, and it's just like when you start to do self-storage, you start to see them everywhere. So I had a really great opportunity this summer. One of my wife's life goals, her bucket list, was to go to the Women's World Cup. So we flew to New Zealand this summer and went to several Women's World Cup games. She got to see the Americans do really crappy and the Swedes do really well. So not super helpful, but it was a really great experience. So what happens? We fly into Auckland, get the rental car. You're on the other side of the road. You're all distracted. Flew 20 hours, and in 7 minutes, we're sitting at a light next to a self-storage facility. I'm not kidding. I'm like, are you kidding me? In the South Island, I'm in a van with some guys going skiing. Just BSing, right? They're down there on a boys' trip. They're in construction. So we're talking about construction. Like, we have a construction company inside of Spartan. They're like, well, what do you build? I'm like, self-storage. The guy's dad's family business was self-storage. So I travel halfway around the world and end up in a storage unit. So it's all over the place. I think my clicker battery is dying here. So when we think about there's an argument out there. Millennials don't like stuff. I see some younger faces in here. I call shenanigans. Because what is a millennial before a millennial? You guys are human beings, right? Everybody's like, no, they're going to live in a van. Like, some of you live in a van, and that's cool. Hashtag van life. Hashtag van life, hashtag toddler, hashtag bad idea. Equals hashtag suburbs. It's coming, millennials. You're going to move to the suburbs. You're going to have 2.5 kids, a cat, a dog, and a fence. You know why? Because raising children in a van, not cool. They tried that in the 70s, didn't work. Right? So when we think about that, and if you take out the generational stereotypes, which they're all there. Gen Xers are this, like millennials are this, Gen Zers are this, the greatest generation is this. At the end of the day, there's some basic human stuff that has to happen for life to progress. Marriage, for the most part. Now your younger kids are doing this partner thing or whatever you're calling it nowadays, but it's the same thing. It's cohabitation with little people running around, right? Like whatever titles you want to put on it, it's the same thing. We're just calling it different things. It's the same thing. You're still going to have stuff all over your front yard. You're still going to step on that rake that your kid left out there, and like you're going to get that Lego in your toe. It's coming. It's going to happen. Yeah, like it's still going to happen. Like you probably still, like some of you like older folks, probably still have a piece of like yellow Lego in your toe right now that you can't get out. It's going to be the same thing. And that's why storage continues to keep going and why millennials are some of the largest users of storage. Because here's the other thing about millennials. You guys like stuff, but you guys like big things, like a kayak. Or 4 of them. Because why would you just have one when you can have 4? Or mountain bikes. Put the mountain bike in the kayak. That's even better, right? Where are you going to put all that stuff? In your 860 square foot tiny house. You're going to put it in my tiny garage. You're going to pay me for it, right? That's why storage continues to be a really good investment. And it's based on the 3 Ds, dislocation, divorce, and disruption, right? So it's one of those things that it's a pretty solid asset class and it's pretty stable. It doesn't really go up, it doesn't really go down, and it produces solid, stable returns. Are you going to get this massively huge uptick? No.
So that would be solid, stable returns. That's my question. Show me how the finances work on this project. I understand multi-unit
Yep.
investment. When you get a chance, let's hear the financial breakdown on working storage unit and what makes it work.
Yep. I've got some financial stuff on the backside. Anything from an operational or storage as an asset class before I jump into more of the financial side of the house. We got 2 here, so.
What are some of the catastrophic pitfalls that your acquisitions team tries to avoid?
So say again.
Your acquisitions team?
Yep.
What are some things that they look out for and avoid that could totally break the deal? Like a cube smart next door.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Okay, so let's talk about feasibility. It's a good place to start because that's what you're asking. So when you think about from a storage perspective, the barriers to entry are relatively low. It's pretty easy to build them. See selling air. A couple walls, a little door, and you're good to go, right? It's pretty easy to build them. In fact, the buildings actually come in kits. So that's literally what happens. So we can build 100,000 square feet of self-storage in 9 months once it's entitled. So truly understanding to the best of your ability the demand in that market. And demand is super fuzzy because it's all over the place. About 1 in 9 Americans use self-storage. But how it's used is vastly different from around the country, right? In New York City, they literally have 5x5s for $300 a month in New York City. In Idaho, I don't know why, but they have like 20x30s. And the guy has 700 acres. I don't know why he's buying storage, but he is, and they're full. So really, truly understanding the demand, that's where you can duff it the most, is if you go in, if the facility is stabilized and you're just buying it for cash flow or you're just buying it to put assets in for depreciation or whatever, storage is a great depreciable asset. You probably don't have to worry about it too much, but just understanding demand is the number one thing you can screw up on an acquisition.
What is the general maintenance of a storage unit?
Good question. So U-Haul or no U-Haul? No U-Haul. Okay. It's pretty easy. That's one of the reasons we did it. You do have to mind the doors. They have heavy springs in them, so when people lift them up. So your biggest thing on a day-to-day basis is light bulbs, the little rubber seal on the bottom of the door, and the little thing of string that you use to pull up the door. That's really it. And then people running into crap because they're coming in there with trailers and driving over everything, right? So that's really it. It's very, very, very easy to maintain.
What about security? Because one of the biggest issues I've ever encountered was just simply pure security, people trespassing, trying to bust into units.
They're going to, period. It's going to happen. So I am trying to get it past my chief legal officer, have this idea for a motion activated paintball gun. And so far, Mr. No, otherwise known as the attorney, will not let me mount them on the roof of our storage facility. So say again? He's like, what if we shoot one of our customers? Okay, we give them a couple $100, a couple free months of rent, and they get a laugh out of it, right? Like, that's it, right? What if we just got the bears? Put like a junkyard bear in the storage facility. So I kid. It is a problem. In fact, so the cartels are getting into this now. So what the cartels are doing, because they're crafty, is they are renting a storage unit and they are going into it, shutting the door and boring through the walls. So you can't see them, right? They're getting crafty. We sell tenant insurance. It's actually a great source of ancillary revenue. And that's really what covers it. There's not a lot you can do. It's not Fort Knox. So we do tell folks. Okay, I will get. So I thought you were like waving at me from like the little like camera back there. So it is really tough. We have break-ins all the time. We get sued for people like getting their stuff stolen, and they're like, "Oh, you did this, you did that." It's the nature of the game. We are the 36th largest operator in the U.S. and we have 25,000 units. That's 25,000 customers. So 500 of them are going to be pissed off at you at any given time. Actually, probably a lot more than that, but 500 are going to be really mad at you at any given time. So it is tough. So they cut fences. And the police don't care. We literally caught a guy, like wrestled to the ground and held him there, called the police, and they're like, yeah, we don't care. Just let him go. But follow up on that story. That dude was murdered. And we're like, ha ha ha, good for you. That's what you get. Yes. So the quick answer is yes, but we have some that are in bad neighborhoods that never get touched, and we have some that are in good neighborhoods that do get touched. So it really matters what's adjacent. We had one that had a really rundown mobile home park that was adjacent, and it was getting hit left and right. And we knew it was coming from the mobile home park. Couldn't. We have one that's in a super bad neighborhood. True story. The neighbor across the street don't know that he's playing with a full bag of marbles because his sign on his fence says, "Beware, dogs have AIDS." That's a true story, but he is fantastic. His aid-ridden dogs can come over anytime. He watches the facility. He lets us know if people were there. So, like, I mean, he is definitely, like, I'm not even going to say he's a few cards short of a deck. I mean, I think he only has a couple cards, and the rest got burned. But fantastic neighbor. So it's really kind of all over the place.
So I noticed a lot of facilities have on-site tenants.
Yep.
Do you recommend that, or does that matter?
My answer to that is garbage because it depends. We occasionally will allow managers, if you're going to buy here in California, it's a great strategy. Why? Because your rents are so damn high, right? So to get I talked to, I was staying out by the airport because I'm leaving early tomorrow morning. And I went and I was talking to the front desk women today at the hotel right by the airport. I'm like, hey, how long is it going to take me to get to Pasadena if I leave at 3:30? They're like, oh. I'm like, well, I'm not leaving at 3:30. I don't know what you're going to say after that, but I don't care. I guess I'm leaving now. But one of them was like, she drove an hour and 45 minutes each way to get to the hotel, right? So if you think about that from a manager's perspective, even here in California, I bet you it's $20 an hour, $22 an hour for a facility manager. But if you can provide housing, that's just that much better of a manager that you can get for that particular facility than you could if you're just trying to pay them $22 an hour and then they have to find. The flip side is it messes with the HR component of it, because if you fire them, it's not like you fire and they don't show up the next day. They don't, but they're upstairs. So it's kind of wonky. So.
What's your thoughts on fully automated?
Great question. It depends. Again, another garbage question. If your business strategy is, I'm going to own one of these things and it's just my money, and you're okay operating at a tier 2 operation, which can be okay. You don't have to hero everything that you're operating. Then it's probably all right. Otherwise, you cannot do this unmanned. It doesn't work. You still need some assets in the area to go by on occasion, do lock checks, release people's units when they don't pay, make sure that weeds aren't growing up, garbage isn't left out, because like the tenants will pull stuff out and just leave it in the freaking drive aisle. They'll do not have a dumpster on site. Do not do that. Like, that's a bad idea, because it will be full every single minute of the day. So don't do that. So if you don't want to operate at the top level, it's an okay strategy, but make sure you have a part-time maintenance guy there, because it will not work.
Right. I mean, obviously you need someone coming by and
Yep.
checking on things, but not on a full schedule.
No. So we are moving towards a hybrid model where we have multiple levels. Each one of our facilities going forward will have tech enabled. None of them will be unmanned from a nobody there perspective, but they will be lightly manned with maintenance and managers rotating through with advanced call center operations on the backside. And what I mean by advanced call center operations is you have a basic call center where they can just take notes and then give it to your people. And then you have advanced call center where you actually have managers that can receive a phone call and actually do stuff in your system. They can rent units, they can create new codes and whatever. So that's where we're moving to. I think the way of the future will be each facility will be tech enabled, so that there are complete self-service options, so that a customer can go through the entire cycle from identification to leaving, 3 years later without ever talking to a human being, but they don't have to if they don't want to.
Yeah, business hours and facilities are open 24/7.
So I would never recommend 24/7. Our facilities are 9 to, or maybe they're 7 to 10. I think our standard hours are 7 to 10. For $25, if you want extended hours, you can get them, because there are legitimate, like there are plumbers that will come in there and they'll use the unit to stock their whatever, and they'll get there at 6:30 a.m., pack their trucks and roll. We have some that are logistics hubs, to where a big truck will come in, barf its stuff out into 4 or 5 units, and little trucks will come in, similar to last mile, but not quite last mile. They want 24-hour access because the trucks are coming in and out all the time. But for the most part, it's very, very, very contained.
What would be a trustworthy source for this feasibility statements?
So there are a number of providers. One of them that's been doing it for decades is Bob Copper. His son Brett has just taken it over. So if you go Copper Management or something like that, Copper like the jewelry color, I don't know, whatever, like mineral. That's who I'd recommend, is Brett Copper. Brett. No N. 2 T's, no N. Yep. All right, any other operational, or should we dive into some finances? Yes, sir.
Assuming that you also have RV and car storage along with the unit storage, but have you done anything on marine storage, boat storage?
So, not by design. So we do, I mean, obviously people will store boats in the RV or car units, but we have not done any as a strategy. So it's ad hoc, is like when we have customers that bring their boats in. Specifically, what question do you have though?
Well, I know people that are doing marine storage, and
Yep.
that seems to be very lucrative.
If it's marine storage, like a traditional marine storage where they've got racks of boats, that's pretty outside of what we would do because of the service aspect of that, right? When you think about that, that's a very operational business because you got the guy driving the forklift to pull the boat down. There's generally winterization. There's definitely like cleaning and some of those other services. It's a slightly different service than, say, self-storage. Okay, so when we think about Mini West self-storage, and I'm going to be completely transparent, I am not the numbers guy. So if you guys want to dive deep into the numbers, that's not me. Not me. I got people for that. I can talk high level on kind of what you're going to be looking at, especially from an LP side of the house. It's going to be very hard for me to dig into the numbers because I don't know what your capital stack is. Does everybody know what I mean by capital stack? Okay, someone said no. Thank you for saying that. So when you think about capital stack, when you're buying a real estate deal, a lot of us execute simple capital stacks. We do two right now. We have an equity component and a debt component. Those two things together make a very, very simple capital stack. Each one of those has a different cost for each one of us. Right now, the weighted average cost of capital, that's a metric if you're doing commercial real estate that you should pay attention to, the WACC, W-A-C-C, and you should try to get that as low as you can. So our weighted average cost of capital is about 11%. It's a combination of our debt and equity currently right now. The REITs, public storage, their weighted average cost of capital even today is 5.75%. They are 100% more efficient on their capital stack than we are. So what they do here and what they can buy is very, very different than what we can. But this particular facility, this was Mini West self-storage. So this was a really, really interesting deal for multiple reasons. Kind of what we're doing with it right now, but even how it started. So this was our first real storage. And we paid $6 million for it. And when we bought it, it had $443,000 of net operating income after expenses. But about a 7.38 cap in April of 2019. Now this facility would trade mid-fives on today's valuation, like even I mean maybe high fives, maybe 5.75, 5.85, somewhere in there. Oh yeah, yeah. So this is the facility to kind of give it to you. This is the one that we built. You saw this earlier in the video. So the business plans for self-storage are not that different from the multifamily side of the house, with the exception of a lot of our business plans include expansions. That's not a huge thing on the multifamily side of the house as much as it is on the storage side of the house, but it really is operational and pricing that we can do here outside of expanding. That's a big, big differentiator for storage that some of the other asset classes don't. Some of the smaller industrial definitely does. Let's see if actually want to go back. So when we bought this property, we paid $6 million for this, which is existing right here. This, which was a 2-acre parcel, which we built on, and then this quick service car wash. Paid $6 million for all of that. Down here? Here? or here. So basically this. That's what we paid $6 million for. This cost $1.6 million to put in, right? That's the $40 a square foot. So approximately, we built 40,000 square feet for $1.6 million. So we were into this total for $7.6 million. We sold this car wash for $1 million. Our basis on it was like $300,000 is what we achieved. So that was a really interesting sale. Somebody came in and wanted it. We didn't. We're not car wash folks. So we took and we gave $1 million back from our capital stack. And I want to say of that $7.6 million, I think we had about $4 million total in equity. So we gave, no, that's not much. That's not too. We gave 40% back for $1 million. So it was about $2.5 million of equity. And within about a year and a half, we gave $1 million back to our investors, a return of capital event, which reduced their capital account. And they got it back like almost immediately. All right, clicker, you're failing me. Oh, there we go. So our capital stack here, 2.3 million in equity, 5.2 million in debt, total 7.5 million with some operating reserves and closing fees. So that was the total into this particular deal. 60-day due diligence, put $60K down for our earnest money. So this is one I highly recommend. Go to our website, steal our due diligence process. And I will tell you this, if you start raising money for other people, or if you're looking to invest in a group, ask them if they have a due diligence process. If they say yes, your next question should be, or your next statement should be, send it to me. I bet you 90% can't. I can. I can tell my team to send it to every one of you right now. That's not true. I don't have any of your email addresses. So, but all of you can go to my website right now, I think, 40% sure, and download it. And you can see exactly what it is. There's 740 items on there. You have it? So, actually, I can send it to all of you. Christina, could you please send it to the entire group? Thank you. Okay, whatever. So, going back to what you were asking, when you think about the competitive analysis, Corsicana, Texas, as you might suspect, isn't a booming metropolis. I mean, it's nice. Fruitcake, outstanding. It's a seat in Navarro County, like that. There was a cheerleader Netflix special about it. Like it was actually Navarro County. Did nothing for Navarro County when that Netflix special came out, so not helpful. But when we went in and we went and mystery shopped the competitors, we found an 83% economic occupancy and a 97% physical occupancy. The difference, everybody know the difference between physical and economic? All right, so when you think about physical occupancy, that's the easy one. It's how many people were there, right? So in storage, the rents are all over the place. It's one of the really great things in storage. You book online, it's just like the airlines. You book online, you get this rent. You show up, the dumpster like full of stuff to my storage, you're gonna pay a much different rent. When my 10 by 10s get to 98% full, 30% price increase for the next person that comes in. Something called ECRIs, existing customer rent increases. It's fantastic, right? So if you think about it, how do we drive value in any piece of real estate? You raise rents, right? No matter what you do, that's kind of a thing with real estate. How often can you raise rents in a multifamily? Once a year, right? Approximately. Or never. So, how often can I do it? Whenever the hell I feel like it. Not quite a great strategy. Your customers will get mad at you, but we do 7 and 11. If you rent with me, you get hit at month 7. You're going to hit again at month 11. If you want to take your stuff, okay, cool. Appreciate you coming in. Thanks. 10% rent increase in multifamily. It's kind of a lot, right? How many dollars is that on average? 250? 200, 300 bucks? How much, based on what I said earlier? $8.70. Your hot mocha latte thing is gone for that day. That's it. That's what you're giving up. One Starbucks frothy foamy thingy, right? So, and I've just driven 10% of value in my facility for $8. You coming down and packing up your stuff for $8? Nope. You're going to get annoyed and you're going to threaten. And I'll be like, no problem. Come on and get your stuff. I will play chicken with you every day. And I will win 90% of the time.
So if we can do increase at 7 and 11, 10% each time, why start so low in terms of pricing? Why not just start high and have less increases?
Yeah. So what we have found is anything above about a 15% price increase, and you start to ratchet up the percentage of folks coming out, like of folks moving out. Now I will say, when we take over facilities, we've done 1,000% price increases because we've come in and somebody's been at $16 a month or something stupid, and it's supposed to be $230 overnight. $230. Sorry, man. Gravy train just fell off the tracks. No more for you. And we'll get, when that happens, we probably get a 50% move out rate for something like that. But who cares? If 50% of them move out, and I just increased it by that much, I'm still above an NOI. So who cares? Oop.
Every 7 and 11 months?
No.
Oh,
So
okay.
usually annually after that.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So unless there's a
That would just be a weird schedule.
unless there's a shift in the market. But we have dynamic pricing. Our systems do it automatically. We don't even have to do it. We can program it in, it just automatically does it.
Looking at the market or based on your growth targets?
Both. We have dynamic pricing and revenue models that we can plug into the system that can pull and scrape data from websites, and then goes into the system, and then the system will automatically adjust prices. Sometimes we turn it off because it can go haywire. So.
So earlier you said you raised over 250 million.
Yep.
Can you go over some strategies you did to raise that much money?
I can, but let me get through these financials first. Don't let me get out of here. 10 minutes left? Okay. Yeah, I don't have a clock, so I have absolutely no idea where I'm at with time. Let me just get to the end state here. For you passive investors out there, okay, so let's just talk about capital here for a second. So for the passive side of the house, most of our stuff, 8-pref, we have different funds, we have different deals, but a 5-iron down the fairway for us is an 8-pref mid-teens IRR. It's kind of where we're at right now. Our development deals, we don't use prefs, we use hurdles that are higher on the IRRs on the development deals, and we look at more equity multiple on the development deals because there is no cash flow, and our development deal multiples are 195 to 225, somewhere in there, 245. For the development deals, a lot more risk in that though. But a big thing about self-storage, and you'll see it in mobile home parks and some of the other non-wood and cement-based assets, is the depreciation. So the cost segregation, if you guys don't know what cost seg is, I highly recommend take a note and just dive in and research that. You should be cost segging every one of your properties. Even if you're in multifamily, you're not going to get very much, but you'll get some. We get a ton. So self-storage, for whatever reason, just because of the materials we build with, cost seg really, really is impactful. So let me see. So when you think about that, the bonus depreciation on a property here wipes out your first 5 years of cash flow. So it's a really, really, really solid tool for the investor to shield that income that's coming off this property. But kind of going back, for a $50,000 investment, this is what this property has generated so far. So about $3,600 a year. I'm not going to do public math. I have no idea what that is from a return perspective, but it's $3,600 a year on 50. So if somebody wants to be a hero and use their phone and tell me what that is as a percentage, that's what it is. But with depreciation, kind of wipe that out. Yep. Equity on the equity side of the house. You don't get it on the debt side. So there was only 2.3 million of equity. The rest was debt. Yep. So this is kind of what's happened with this property so far from our proposed to actuals. And it's done very, very well. This has been a fantastic investment. I'm not going to get into this now because it will spiral into a conversation I don't have time. But we actually just recapped this into a Delaware statutory trust, a DST. If you're not familiar with that, that's something that you can pull the wires on. I'm not getting into it. Yeah. I don't know that I would ever do one again. It is very good on the tax side. It is very complicated on the paperwork side. So very complicated. But it is a way to eliminate 1031 risk. So it is a good tool. The answer is yes to your question, and we're in the process of that raise right now. So we'll see how this first one goes for us. So, but it is incredibly complicated to set up. All right, let's talk about capital raising. So I wouldn't ask questions about how do I raise money. I would ask questions, how do you service the money once you do? Because that's where sponsors screw up. I got a stupid cousin that I invested with and sued. Makes Thanksgiving a little dicey. But the reason is because my wife and I gave him hundreds of thousands of dollars and he screwed it up. That's not why I sued him. I knew he was an idiot. So I sued him because he quit communicating. Because he was the guy out there on the damn bulldozer. So if you think about that, like that's fine to invest with your stupid cousin Jeff, who is a good dude that didn't have the infrastructure to service the capital that he raised. Like Jeff got me into storage. It was actually, we're super cordial. I'm like, hey man, I'm sorry I'm doing this. Like I have to. There was other people in it with me. And like actually Thanksgiving was kind of cool because we were talking about the lawsuit. I'm like, Jeff, I'm going to sue you. He's like, cool. So really, really for capital raising, if you're going to take somebody else's money, because that's easy to do. It's easy to take somebody else's money. It's much harder to service it once you do if you don't have a plan. Because my team, I've got 150 people that are doing this, right? Kind of all through the organization. My IR team has 6 people on it. And that's all they do, day in and day out, is making sure we're communicating with our investors monthly. And we have 1,200 active investors. We have 12,000 investors on our list. So make sure you can service it. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it'll be easy for you to go to these conferences and go raise $1 million and do your first deal. And if you screw up the servicing of it, you won't raise another dollar. If you get the servicing correct, the money will raise itself.
What would you say would be the average number of investors per property?
Depends on the size. I mean, we did an individual syndication that was 110 million. Number of investors per property. So we did an individual deal that was $110 million. There's 179 investors in there. We've done other deals where it's gone out and one of our big check writers is like, I'll take that. And it's one. And the guy just puts in $3 million or whatever the hell it is. If I had to guess, I don't know. Let me answer the question a different way. Our average invested is $117,000 per investor. Now there's obviously tails there. We have individuals. We don't have any institutional money in our capital right now. So right now it's truly the Pareto principle, the 80-20. The top 20 investors probably have brought 75 million or so of the 250. And then we obviously have a really long tail at the 50,000, but our average investor is 117,000 is the average invested. So whatever the equity is divided by 117.
Including IRAs, individual.
Yes. Yep. I think I'm almost out of time here, so. Two minutes.
Any reliable third-party data aggregators?
Yeah, so Radius is a good one. Radius is probably one of your best bet. Yardi is another one. Depending on what you're looking for, Esri has a lot of demographic data, so it just depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for self-storage specific, Radius is probably your best bet. Yardi is probably number 2. But we spend a lot of money on data. We have CoStar.
With the current economic times, what's your criteria, your buy box?
As far as like what are we picking up? I don't know that we have one in particular. We are underwriting to our returns, and what we need for another metric to look at is your return on invested capital. That's how efficient you're leveraging your investors' money to make money. We have a minimum of 10%. If it's not 10%, don't come to me. I don't want to look at that deal. If we can't hit the mid-teens IRR and achieve a cash flow of at least 2% in the first couple of years, because cash flow deals right now, I mean, we're in a negative leverage environment. It's just very, very difficult. So if we're going to go to our growth or our income fund, we try to hit 2% per year. Our buy box is more on location versus the financial side.
That's what I was more asking about. In the areas you're going for, what are your metrics that you shoot for?
So we're the opposite of where you mentioned you were. We are above 40,000 square feet. Yep. It just gets too hard to manage at our scale.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna, like, where we're buying right now is where we have existing assets, or at a minimum, we'll need to buy 200,000 square feet in a market at one time to open up a district.
So you get above 10 per capita?
Yeah, like,
You buy above?
it depends on how close they are. We have, Macon is probably one of our more concentrated markets, and we probably have 6 or 7 in a 25-mile radius or something along those lines.
You ever buy under $1 a square foot a month?
Yeah. So if it depends on the market and depends on the business plan. We try not to, because that's getting pretty low. We probably try to shoot for 13 to 15 as far as that's our rent, our annual rent. Ideally, we're 16 to 17. If it's development, it's 19 to 22.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, give me a hand, guys. So appreciate you pivoting,
So
Scott and
thank
Ben.
you.
All right, give him another hand.